Since I'm one of the oldest people on the panel, I'll have soup while we all talk.
Yeah. But you're going to hold it like this the whole time?
No, I'm trying to put it on the stand. Hang on.
Fuck, this really is the old people panel, huh?
Is everybody on HD?
Hey, where does one click for this now?
You guys are supposed to be the pros. What's going on?
Who told you to get the people who've been around for a decade?
The boomer generation.
Hello and welcome to DeadAnt Huddle. We're in conversation today with 6 comedians who have been integral to the Indian comedy scene in some way or form over the last decade. I'm going to start with my first experience with stand-up comedy, for which Veer needs to stop eating for 1 second.
Okay, sorry.
So I first met Veer Das in 2003 in a basement in Delhi, which sounds like the perfect setup for a horror story. But essentially, he was doing a stand-up comedy workshop at the time and hoping to sort of nurture talent from that and get the club comedy scene going. And then you disappeared for a little bit and then came back and actually started getting things going. Do you want to tell me a little bit about where we were at when you came back in terms of urban stand-up comedy in India and what you saw in it that made you want to sort of go after that particularly?
Okay, so firstly, I just want to clarify, just because you're in a basement with me, no matter who you are, does not mean it's automatically an unsafe experience. Like, I'm good in basements. I behave with people on any floor of a building. I'm quite safe. What happened into this feels like, kids, when I showed up, back, there were no microphones in India. No, it was 2003 and I had just done, I'd done a show in college called Brown Men Can't Hum, which was like a 90-minute stand-up comedy show. And the title was as good as the show, pretty much, zero laughs. And I was an amateur in Chicago and I was doing open mics in Chicago. And there you'd get to see 50, 60 comics go up and do, 2 to 4 minutes each. And then I kind of came down saying, let's just do a workshop so that we can start building something here. When I came down, I should say, and this is something I said to you before we started, like, this shouldn't be like, at first there was nothing and then the people on this panel showed up, because it wasn't that case. Like, there was many, many people before us. So there was like Baman Irani, Ash Chandler, Vikram Sathe, Papa CJ, Mahabanu Modi Kotwal, Bharat Dabolkar, Johnny Lever, etc., etc., etc. I had been doing stand-up, but it was a shadi thing in Hindi, so there was like a UP belt where there was lots of stand-up happening, or it was a very like sobo Bharat Dabolkar, Boman Irani kind of a thing. So when we started doing these workshops, I just wanted to find other people who said balls on stage, or talked about having sex on stage. And then I got into grad school and I took off after the workshop. And then I dropped out of grad school and came down to Bombay. So that's kind of how that happened. I think everybody here has had that one defining moment where you're just like, oh, fuck, I never want to do anything else with my life except this. And if other things that pay me more money come, I will do them, but I will keep doing this.
I think everybody here, I think everybody here has also had that defining moment on stage where everybody's silent. You're like, why do I do this?
Yeah, absolutely. We've also had they shouldn't do this. They should not do this at all. We've had that as well. But I just needed other people to do this with, who were like me.
Okay, so around 2008, 2009, you had moved to Bombay and you had started the Amateur Nights, which is basically open mics that started in Bombay and also moved to the south as well. We got Tanmay Bhatt out of it, Varun Grover, Varun Thakur, Praveen, I'm coming to it, and Anu Menon and Rohan Joshi. Rohan went for his first ever open mic and won the damn thing. At that time, if I'm not mistaken, you were a writer. So did you kind of make the switch quite quickly, or were you just like waiting and...
Let's not dress up what I was at the time. I was working with Times Now. Let's just lay the shame of it out there. That's what I was doing. But I was a writer. I was doing that. I went to the open mic, honestly, on a lark, right? Because again, I think there was an entire generation of us. And this is also a very important step in this, which is a few years before that, through the combination of piracy and Russell Peters, it's everything we've ever seen Seinfeld or Chris Rock or anybody do. But this guy's talking about brown parents and this guy's talking about this. And then that was the first time we thought, hey, we can also do this. So when I went to the open mic, it was like, this would be a fun hobby to have, or this would be a fun thing to try, like on a lark. I had no idea this could be a career at all. And like Veer says, there's always that moment where you're like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that moment was, so Blue Frog had 300 people there. They were there to watch Veer, of course. Very important that we note this, because Amateur Night also sets up very unrealistic expectations for what the other open mics in your life are going to be like. 300 people, everybody laughing, clapping, good mood, not like the 10-person open mics you then get used to later on in life. But that first laugh, when like that roar of 300 people just sort of rolls up onto the stage, and you feel so validated by it. And yeah, and I think immediately after that open mic, I remember having a chat with Veer. He called a bunch of us over to his place, and he sort of loosely outlined this vision for what he wanted to do, where he's like, he wanted that there should be more shows, we should start playing with format, we should start writing, we should start and also at the same time thinking about it from a sustainable point of view, which is that we should also be taking contract writing gigs, writing for other people, and all of that sounded just significantly more exciting than any other contract writing or work I'd been doing up until that point. And sort of had this moment where I was like, I don't have to work for this piece of shit anymore. And then I started working with Weird Ass. So I think within like a year of having started from my first open mic, I got to do so many different formats that I think there are comedians around the world who probably have to rugdo for 5, 6, 8 years sometimes to be able to do that.
Anu Menon was also at a Amateur Night, but she came straight from being one of India's favorite characters in the world, which is Lola Kuti on Channel V. At that time, what were your expectations of comedy, and where did you see the subculture going? And in terms of yourself, where did you see yourself in that space?
I mean, I don't think anyone could have predicted where it was going, right? Because it was still in like a nascent stage. I remember Veer had come to Channel V saying that, oh, should I be a VJ also? And so the boss at the time was like, no, I don't think he's really cut out for it. And then later that boss went to Amateur Night, just by the way. So life comes full circle. Veer was like, hey, we're doing improv. Why don't you come? There's a really, fun, talented bunch of boys. You should meet them. So it's like Tanmay and Rohan and stuff. And we're going to call ourselves the Cardinal Bengal. I mean, I said, why get into why? It is what it is. And we had these photo shoots, and we had we used to do these. And now if you look back, we were quite horrible, but also very good sometimes. But it was very extreme, right? And I remember we did a show in Singapore, and we came back to Bombay, and someone was on the flight. He looked at me and he said, hey, aren't you a Cardinal Bengal? And I pissed myself, because all this while I've been so used to people, automatically you're saying, you're Lola, yes. And then suddenly I wasn't used to, are you a Cardinal Bengal? So I was like, oh, has the transition begun? But, and also when people talk about, oh, did you struggle to get slots? I was like, no, because I had this baggage of Lola. So they're like, bichari, usko chance de. My struggle was different in terms of finding a voice as to what does Anu sound like on stage, because I have this image of Lola, and people expected that. So half the audience, it was very divided, right? Half the audience is very happy, you're nothing like Lola. Half the audience is extremely disappointed, you're nothing like Lola. So I don't think you could please. And also I was so used to playing a character, whether it was in theater, in a play, or in a movie, or as Lola. So suddenly just who Anu Menon was on stage, that was another, but that was a different fight altogether.
Okay, so meanwhile in Delhi, Neeti Palta was a copywriter who was also grabbing stage time and doing comedy there. So tell me a little bit about what was happening in Delhi at the time.
At that point, I think Cheese Monkey Mafia, run by Raghav Mandava, they were hosting open mics out there, and I was not aware of stand-up comedy in its current avatar. And I had just about taken a break from writing for Sesame Street. And I remember showing up for one of these Whose Line Is It Anyway shows. Brad Sherwood and Colin Mockery had come to India for the first time, and I was so excited I landed up. So on that sound effects round, I stood up on top of my chair and I waved. So now there's no way they could ignore me. So they called me up on stage, and I was making sound effects for them, but I guess, this is the problem why comedians can't be good improv artists. We like stage time. So I just started making random sound effects, whether it went with their story or not. And at the end of it, Colin Mockery was like, you should try stand-up. And I remember Raghav approaching me at the end of that show saying, why don't you come check out the scene?
Meanwhile, in Chennai, there was a Tamil movie star who had also started an arts organization called AIBM that was focusing at the time on theatre. At some point, you guys recognized the potential for comedy and you started hosting open mics and signing on people to give them the power of being in a collective.
I think one is that we were kind of independent and ignorant of what was happening in the rest of the country. Okay, This was around 2008 and we were going broke doing theatre because the grander plays required more lights and the auditoriums were getting more expensive and we were struggling to make a living doing theatre. And that's when we started writing our own scripts, started doing our own sketches. And then we said, let's cut down the lights, let's cut down the actors. And we came up with a solo play with just one actor, one light, and no auditorium. Right? We were reduced to that because we lost a lot of money doing Chetan Bhagat's 5 Point Someone on stage. And all our money, we wiped out. We're like minus at that point of time, 35 lakhs down. And we had no auditorium dates. So we booked a buffet hall and we did solo theatre. So we called it solo theatre. So technically I was the only actor who took the bait because we had to do it in the form of comedy. 45 minutes, let's drop an hour show right there. And ironically, it took me 8 years after that to write an actual solo because, it's like, oh, you need to be funny throughout, is it? Oh, okay. Right. So I think we understood what punchlines were. Our punchlines became more sharp over a period of time. We invite all the artists who came in from that first generation. We're all either assistant directors in cinema or theatre artists wanting stage time. So Naveen Richard was technically our lead actor in 5 Point Someone. And I remember at that point of time, there was the small group called Mumbai Heroes, which was getting stage time in some B slot or C slot on Comedy Store. And when they came, and that's when I saw Rojo and Tanmay and Khamba for the first time on stage. And I was like, this is what we're doing in Chennai. This is exactly what we're doing. He's doing Hindi and we're doing like English meeting Tamil, and I was like, okay, so we're not alone in this shit. So it felt at all points of time, I think we were looking at the national scene from a point of saying, okay, we're not totally out of our brains. This is working. I think, but always what is unique about the AIBM journey was, I think, the hustle that this had to be live. Live is the main thing. So, I don't know. So just that romantic journey of making sure that we can make a viable living being performers on a live stage. I think that's been I think we started off being extremely loud and theatrical because we were performing in rooms that nobody was giving us attention. So we had to do that Bandar dance first. So we first proved that we are loud and emoji-like so that people get our attention. They get us, and then we can throw a joke at them, hurl it at them like a weapon. Right? Because it has to slap them in the face to know first that there's a show happening. So, yeah, you will find that first generation of South Indian comics are being quite loud in our ways. Very like, बहुत ज़्यादा, I mean, joke से ज़्यादा theatrics ज़्यादा हो रहा है kind of approach to theatre. Yeah. But it was theatre. We saw it as theatre for the longest time.
Now we come to Upmanyu, who got into the game a little bit later, around 2013, after the internet was already a very big part of the lives of the community, right? You went basically straight to YouTube. You have 3 million subscribers for 12 videos, of which there are 20 million views, 30 million views. And social media, you're really erratic. And yet somehow you're like selling out and you're making like being independent and flying solo look really easy. So my question to you is, chal kya raha hai exactly?
Yeah. No, I think so. Before, like I entered in 2014. So usse pehle, there was a thing called YouTube Comedy Week, in which I saw Veer's video. It was on Mamta Banerjee, where it was some angry show. And I saw that video. Yeah, it's on YouTube. Where Veer is explaining, where he's shitting on somebody who's entering late or something like that. And I had seen like a lot of stand-up before that. But when I saw Veer like doing, like I'm like, oh, this is the same thought that I have, but he's doing it in the way that is like, it seemed very fresh and it was very new to me. Like I was like, oh, we can just do it like this. And I remembered Veer like from, मुझे बचपन से याद था on CNBC और मैं like, oh, this is the same guy that I used to like. मैं सोचता था नाम क्या है इसका, अब पता लग गया है, वीर दास नाम. And me and my friend were partying, and in that party I was cracking some jokes. So he's like, अरे तुझे stand up try करना था, why don't you try it? I go, oh yeah, I'll try it tonight. And then I searched for some open mic, and there was some cafe rati open mic that used to happen in Delhi, in which they give you 2 minutes. And I went there and I did it for 2 minutes and I called my friends. मैं कहा यार वो company बंद कर दे. अब कुछ नहीं हो सकता. This is it. I found it and we have to shut down the company. I'm just going to do stand-up. And from there, I kind of just focused on just building stand-up. I just didn't think of anything else. I didn't think of any results. And then in 2015, I came to watch Bill Burr when I met Tanmay, and Tanmay kind of was like, dude, you don't have to do anything in Delhi. Just come to Mumbai. I'm like, yeah, but I don't have money. He's like, whatever money you need, tell me and just come here and then we'll see what to do. So I think this is where it started, where I just came and then I was like, okay, I have nothing else. I just always thought that stand-up is my main thing and that is the only skill that I can have. Other than that, I'll keep doing other things. Yeah, उसके बाद अब जो है ये सोशल मीडिया फॉलोइंग और ये सब इसमें मैं इतना ध्यान नहीं दे रहा क्योंकि मुझे लगता है बहुत टाइम है, बाद में बनाएंगे फॉलोइंग. जब बनानी होगी तो मैं बना ही लूंगा. Like 10-15 साल बाद when I'll be in my 50s or something, then I'll start to be like, okay, do I have a following? But right now I feel like
nobody's going to follow you in your 50s.
They will. Because by that time I'll be very good, I hope.
Okay.
This is how cults start. I just want to say, this is how it happens.
Yeah.
Actually, you had a contrast with Veer, who came in at a time where the internet was not being used for anything other than on Twitter telling jokes and being funny and cool. What do each of you wish that you had of the other's time?
These guys are just lucky they didn't have to sleep with the audience after every show and then have that word of mouth spread, and that's I'm kidding. Like the first real stand-up set that I put online was a Netflix special. Like that's the first time I really put stand-up online.
Way to flex, bro. Way to flex.
I'm just saying, dude, like till date, I have zero YouTube following. Like I'm digitally irrelevant as far as YouTube, Facebook, all of that stuff goes.
Veer has famously gone on record to say, I don't have a viral video. Just by the way, guys, I don't have a viral stand-up video. I just have 4 Netflix specials.
But I don't. I like
true,
legit.
true, yeah.
I don't have that. What do I wish I had that other people had? The ability to work out material. That's something I learned very late in life. Like I'll tell you, I would write these 90-minute shows like History of India or Broken Das or whatever, and then we just go up with 90 minutes of new material in front of 1,000 people, and there's no dynamics. You're just going blah 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 blah, and just seeing where people laugh, and then you tweak it over time. So writing, rewriting, re-listening, reworking out material, that's the one thing I wish I had like 8-9 years ago,
And for Upmanyu, the opposite?
No, nothing that they had.
Nothing.
I want. No. I mean, they got the shitty end of the deal. Like seriously, it sucks that they had nothing. They had to just go and try. What AIB ने जैसे जो podcast में लोग बोलते हैं उन्होंने ये बातें बोली थी, वो बोला था, मैं भी वही बातें बोल रहा था, बस मैं online नहीं डाल रहा था. So I mean, it was just like we were all shitty, but we just like they had to take all the bullet of everything.
Yeah.
ये नहीं बोलना, ये नहीं बोलना, ये नहीं करना. They were just like, अरे अभी तो तुम हंस रहे थे, अब क्या हो गया? It was just learning from like them getting shot down everything. कि ये भी नहीं मिला. Oh, ठीक है, फिर हम भी delete कर देते हैं अपना वो. Like that's what was happening. So yeah, I think I was lucky enough to enter when it was the audience was ready when I was putting out a video. There was already an audience asking for videos.
Yeah,
they were creating audiences, which is a very tricky. So no, never. Nothing.
Never.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. So let's take a look at a little bit in terms of the lessons that you've learned over the last 10 years and through all of your experimentation. I want to start actually at the start of the decade when we had collectives. And collectives served the purpose at the time to have a ready lineup in place and to draw bigger crowds. And some of them went on to become businesses. So you had Weird Ass and AIB, EIC, Shits and Giggles, even Avam. And then for various reasons, some of those sort of fell apart and perhaps they served their purpose or whatever it is. But do you think that there is anything in there to be learned from being a collective? And do you think that we might have to return to some sort of group dynamics in the post-pandemic world, since to my mind, things are seeming fragmented again? I could be wrong, but
so I don't know about like sort of returning to group dynamics in a post-pandemic world, because I also feel like now what's happened is the comedy world has enough, for want of a better term, star names that if you put any 6 of them on a lineup, the people will come.
yes.
The people will come. So that's one good thing. But one thing that really, at least that personally helped me in being part of a collective and on going up on stage with other people is it makes you have to punch harder. Because there's 3 people out there that are also crushing it. So one, you also want to make sure you're as good. It makes you want to raise your game. Also, what happens is you find that your work gets critiqued a lot better. So there'll be a joke that I'll do, and suddenly there's 2 guys going, but wait, we can take it from here to here because, there's the 3 of us. Or, hey, this thing that you were doing, I got this thought that I can think of so many jokes and bits and things that sort of started off here. And yes, you could have workshopped them to here or there, but with 4 people, with 5 people, sometimes just writers' rooms full of people challenging your ideas at every single turn, the material just explodes and goes to a place that I don't think it could go to if I was writing that material, say, alone, or if nobody had challenged that material, or if nobody had asked why or taken a devil's advocate position. And I think that was like sort of great, that's free training in a way that you can't get in any other way. Being challenged so consistently by people you respect. So they're not just doing it to be dicks.
I think the reason why collectives came about, not because they wanted to be a collective, they ended up being a collective because they wanted, these kindred spirits who are doing the same shit. We needed to meet like-minded people who are like, okay, we're all in this shit together, right? Okay, so it was chaotic. So therefore you wanted to, you kind of wandered towards people who were doing the same thing together. And the benefit of the collective is what Rojo is saying right now, that you could spar with people on material, and you had an impromptu writer's room without having to put it together, right? So like this new special I'm writing, I'm putting together a writer's room to challenge me. But we need more comedians just working with each other because it makes each other's art better. And that is fucking cool, and I would not like to miss that in life.
I think if collectives were to come back, they'd come back in a healthier way now. Every collective had a tone. I remember that distinctly. There was an AIB tone. There was an EIC tone. There was a distinct tone. And it's because they were very just into each other, but not doing a lot of other stuff as well. I think now, because you're thinking of comedians, not just as comics or writers, but creators who get to do all these various things, I think the artists within a collective would be allowed to interact with enough other things where they'd start bringing different perspectives. This is personal, but there's always the balance between yes, being challenged and yes, being called out, but also the inside joke that only makes the comics laugh. That's a trap as well. If that's forming the bulk of your writing. So I think collectives will now, there's enough of a scene and a spread where everybody in a collective will probably be doing enough stuff where they'll bring different perspectives to a collective.
But I have to say, Veer actually called it. I remember years ago, we were going to watch an Ashwin Gidwani play. And we were discussing, like the state of comedy at the time. And he was like, I don't know for sure how long collectives will last, say, if you have to look into the future and if I have to be Nostradamus. Because ultimately, everyone also is an individual artist. And I think organically, it will veer towards everyone pursuing their individual comedic voice. Because for now, this is great. But ultimately, it's not something that will hold. And it turned out, to be true now in hindsight.
And what people should know who are watching this, collectives broke down only because the business interests of multiple people could not be matched.
Yeah.
The artistic value of it is infinite. But the business interest, it's impossible. It's like 4 Beatles together and one person wants to do this, one person. Everybody thinks they're Lennon. So there are 4 Lennons in the room.
The other, actually, Karthik used a really important word for, I think, what was fun about also being part of the collective experience. And that word is lonely. I think every comic here knows the journey of, like, while it's great fun when you're on stage, etc., all of that, the lonely journey of the solo tour, right? So after even the best show, there's that moment where you go back to your hotel room and it's just you alone in a room that looks like every other room on that tour, in a city that could be any city. You wake up some mornings going, yeah, there we go. Where am I? What city is this today? I wish there was somebody here. I would shut my laptop if I was alone at like 7 p.m. But if there's 2 other people in the room, I'm like, no, we still have to do this.
This is exactly what's happening to me right now in the lockdown also, where I was just kicking back. I'm a very lazy person. And I wake up in the morning and I'm scared to open Instagram because I know that Veer would have done something or one of the guys would have done, and I'm like, I literally open it and then I'm like, okay. And then, I feel happy if I've written in my head, I told myself, if you write 3 to 4 jokes a day, by the end of a week, you'll have 15 minutes and all that, something like that.
Yeah.
So sometimes you forgive yourself. चल आज एक ही joke हुआ या एक ही status update हुआ, उतनी देर में Veer has a Netflix special.
Hey, come on. I was lonely. I was at home. There was a camera.
We were all lonely.
We had the same variables.
We all had cameras. We all have the same thing. All right, get over yourself.
I think one of the main point about, suppose I come up with an idea that, oh, maybe I should do this. If I was in a collective, they'll push me to just, let's do it. Whereas if I'm alone, I'll be like, oh, I have an idea. And then it'll just fizzle out after a month. I won't even remember it. Whereas if I am in a group, they'll be like, oh, whatever shitty idea you have, we are doing it. And then it bombs. Then okay.
Yeah, but you've never worked with anybody. Do you think that post-pandemic you might? You've never done it. So I don't know what you're pretending.
No, I did actually. Because, I tried to make sketches when AIB was making it, and then we realized that why the fuck are we making it? It's AIB making it. There's no need for sketches. It's very difficult and it gives no returns.
Yes.
It's a different art form. It's filmmaking, and I'm like, what are we doing? This is too much hard work for just nothing. Because I was looking at all the comedians that I followed and all the comedians that I've like whether Louis C.K., Dave, they were all trying to make films. They're trying to do. James A. Castro is my favorite right now. He's doing 2 shows. Apart from stand-up, they were all into something major. So I feel like, okay, that's I can't be the first one to be like, no, I'll only do stand-up and be good.
I don't know if you guys have found this, but like because everybody has been doing it a while, right? Where you now discover that part of the job is experiencing things. Like you have to go out and do shit, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Because we write 5 jokes a day or whatever, but the worst thing in the world is a comedian who's been doing it for like 20, 25 years, and there's nothing different, because we've all fallen, let's be honest, into the special cycle, right? Where I have to write a new 60 minutes, whether it's online, not online, whatever. I have to write a show that I can tour. And the journey is, this show has to be different from the last one, thematically, evolution, etc., etc. And the worst thing in the world, we're not going to take names, is a comedian whose every special is about the same experience, except now it's a private jet, or now it's a whatever, etc., etc. Which means for the last 2 years, he's not gone out and tried anything, So, like, I find that's the job
important
now, right? It's just saying yes to everything. Skydiving, fuck it, chalo. Paratha khane in this new shop, chalo. Like, have to say yes to every experience so that you have non-douchebag material, which will be interesting to see what happens after the lockdown, no? Because,
we have to prepare ourselves. We have to prepare ourselves for the glut of what I learned about myself in the lockdown specials that are coming.
You guys are really overestimating the circuit, because I went to an open mic and there were 10 open micers right now. And out of those 10, only 1 had jokes about the pandemic.
Really?
The other 9 were like, मैं कहा तुम्हें क्या nuclear bomb गिराएं तब मटेरियल लिखोगे नया तुम? क्या चाहिए तुम्हें? क्या चाहिए क्या? तुम नए jokes लिखो. क्या होगा इस दुनिया में? They are not even addressing the masks. मैं कहा वो अभी लेकिन सलमान खान, मैं कहा छोड़ दो अब यार. अब छोड़. Random. Please. So, yeah.
Another highlight, and we're going to talk very, very, very quickly about the roast. Did you...
Madam, matter is sub judice. And
what was your biggest takeaway from that? I know that there were FIRs and there were people protesting outside the OML office and there was a lot of stress. But secretly, were you guys thinking that, shit, we made it?
There's very great security that comes in knowing that doesn't matter what I do from here on out. I made one moment of culture that is indelible.
Yeah.
Like nobody can take it. But I will never forget just the energy of the night. Like just that night. It's very rare that you just get off stage and everybody looks at each other and goes, something special happened here tonight.
Yeah.
And that is a feeling that will always be my key takeaway from it. And I will always say the proudest moment of my career is this. I will tell this story till the day I die. All right. And this is how I sum up what the roast is for me and for the culture. I was walking down the street in Colaba and this guy tried to sell me a pirated DVD of the roast.
Oh!
All right. And I still remember one of my proudest moments was taking the DVD from him, pointing to the cover and going, that's me. You, as somebody who has grown up in the 2000s, for me, the single biggest highlight of my career is I made something that people wanted to pirate. I used to go online myself and look at how many seeds and leechers the roast torrent had. You know what? Still delighted to have been part of it. And it is what it is. It was what it was. And the best piece of advice I was given while the whole matter was going on is every Friday, leave your house. Leave your house. Because if the cops want to harass you, the best time to arrest you is Friday evening. Because you can't get in front of a magistrate before Monday morning.
Ah,
Nice.
right.
So the best piece of advice I got was Friday, fuck off from
Get
home
out.
and go to some friend's house. Like just go somewhere, go anywhere, but just ideally to a place that the cops won't know you're there. So I actually ended up having some really great weekends in those 8 or 9 weeks. So yeah.
We had done the roast of Suhail Seth as part of the Pajama Festival in Delhi, right? And so post all this had happened, I bump into Suhail Seth somewhere and he tells me, we should have released that roast. I was like, you think? He's like, but I would have protected Veer. I was like, what, at 4'11"? Like, I don't understand. How?
By the way, let me add to that by saying something that everybody fucking says in secret and nobody says in public, all right? More people should have stood up for you guys on that roast, including the fucking people on that roast. More people should have stood up for you. You guys paid a price for a very large amount of people who were way more fucking famous than you, who should have stood in your corner and bailed like bitches. There, I said it. Sorry.
But I think again, without taking names or without pointing fingers at any one specific industry, I think we've shown that to be a pattern in their lives. Of having an inability to do that for anything. So it's fine.
Yeah, I'll put this out there though. Like this is something comics should know. We got like some 17 or 18 legal notices for Hasmukh when it came out. So I had to go to virtual high court and have a hearing or whatever. And we won the case, but now the Delhi High Court has put into record the definition of what a stand-up comedian is because of Hasmukh. So just for any comics who are there is now a High Court hearing that says the job of a comedian is A, B, C, to take it to ridiculous places, to make it absurd, any resemblance. It is not to be taken seriously.
Nice.
Does not warrant legal action. So if you're ever in trouble, someone versus Hasmukh, Delhi High Court, please check it out. and
thank you for that.
Yeah, so that's in there. So yeah.
Okay, since you guys all digressed severely, I want to come back to Upmanyu to ask him.
Wow, just dripping sarcasm, aren't we? Just because we're pretty with our straight hair.
Still doing roast.
Snap.
I just want to get Upmanyu's reaction to when the roast was happening. Where were you at that point and what were you thinking?
We were really, really excited that the roast was happening. And I think that was the first time that my parents called me and they were like, oh, do you know these guys? I was like, yeah, they're my friends. They were not.
Do you think a roast could happen today? And I'm not saying the Indian context. I'm just saying like PC, woke, this shaming, that shaming, blah, 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 Twitter, etc., etc., etc.
I feel like we'd have to write different, write smarter. And in a way, maybe that's not a bad thing.
I think it's basically taken out all the low-hanging fruit and...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now you've got to work harder.
Yes, absolutely true.
Okay, another uncomfortable highlight of the last 10 years was MeToo. When you think back now, are there any ways in which, do you have any ideas on how something like this could be tackled better, how the community as a whole could respond better? There was a very haphazard response to the allegations and the fallouts that a lot of people in the scene suffered.
As somebody who was very much at the center of it, I know that we had to look at the situation and be like, we have a lot to learn about ourselves, we had a lot to learn about the corporate culture that maybe we enabled or didn't enable, and that we had to make those changes on our basis. But on a larger obviously we realized that we have to make certain just cultural improvements in just the way the comedy scene is run, right? Like a lot of things came up about just how green rooms are in general, for example, or how, the spaces are in general. And I think on an individual level, people realize that. But in terms of, given that there isn't a formal organization of comedians, it becomes very difficult to have a singular organized response or an institutional response, so to speak, that would have some sort of blanket effect across the community.
The whole union of comics, it's never even worked abroad, guys. Like, let's be clear.
Yeah.
They've tried to do it in the 70s, 80s. At the end of the day, we are kind of, solo nomads in that sense, going everywhere. Like, I'll sometimes call Aditi if I'm writing something, be like, is this tone deaf? Will you tell me what I'm not seeing here? Will you tell me what I'm getting wrong, etc.? And the unfortunate reality is, as usual, women, you kind of have to tell us how to do it, and you have to tell us what to do. Because the Me Too movement was largely women expressing themselves at that moment. And the next time it happens, we just have to kind of, if there's one thing we can do, it's work together to amplify the female comedy voices. That's the one thing we can all agree on we need to do. Just saying, what do you want? How do we fix this? What do you think is a good idea? What will make it better? And put that out there through our own followings, our own platforms, our own listening. I don't know.
At a very simplistic level, I just think, even say from a comedy producer point of view, if you have 10 comics on your lineup, don't have 9 men and 1 woman.
Yeah.
Right? Because then also it gets very lonely. So if you want to, or the other extreme is, we'll have an all female comedy lineup, which personally I'm not like a huge fan of. All right. So I feel like have 6 male comedians, 4 female comedians. Like, that's a nice, like, it's an interesting mix and a nice balance. Right. So I think those are at like a very basic small thing, because I've been at the receiving end of it, where it's 10 women on the lineup and the producer will be like, "Arey yaar, tickets are not selling. Abhi kya kare? Just post, do this live, amplify your post." So that's also becomes extremely disheartening, right? From that point of view. Individually, you need to realize that we're never going to come to a consensus, because it is also a very individual voice profession, right? Comedians all have individual voices. They're very disparate voices. And for us to reach a consensus is not going to happen. So at an individual level, you just need to be better and tweak small things. And unfortunately, we don't realize the things that we're doing, whether we've grown up in a certain environment or things have been okay to say flippantly, or there are lots of reasons why people react, and it's not all their fault, right? Or they're not doing it purposely, they're not doing it to be swines. It's just cultural conditioning as well. So I think at least now that women have voiced their opinion, men are also slightly more circumspect in terms of, and I've been like on shoots and at where the camera operator, before he would have just said, he would have held me and said, "Can you just turn towards the light?" And in this case, he was like, "I'm sorry, can I just touch you and just turn you towards light?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So which is a welcome change, you know what I mean?
Actually, true. What was acceptable before is not acceptable now.
Yeah.
And that's happening. The change is so rapid that comedy has to keep up. So like Veer said, there are male artists reaching out to me, and honestly, being a comic, I'll allow for a far more to be said than I guess a normal audience member would. So I also have to don that hat. So funnily enough, I'm reaching out to a lot of male artists, bouncing my jokes off and asking, "Is this sexist?" In the opposite direction also. Because, hey, come on, if you're talking equality, let's talk equality then. Because then you get called out saying, "Acha, we can't say this, but how come you can say that?" Then it becomes like a mind-boggling game also.
But a lot of times that's a false equivalence also that's drawn,
that's
right? Like a lot of times that's a huge false equivalence that's drawn. Look, the power dynamic is inherently so skewed in one direction that for people to be like, "Oh, now women," I don't know that that's necessarily true. What frustrated me was people from other industries and other fraternities being holier than thou, right? Yeah. Like, for example, people from like finance or medicine or whatever. I'm like, are you fucking acting like this is not a thing that has ever happened in your industry? The only difference between you as a finance person and me is that I have cameras on me all the time and eyes watching me to call me out on it. You're telling me that this has never fucking happened in like a KPMG or an HDFC or any of that stuff. Don't be holier than thou about this to me. Like, this is something that is unique to my field or my industry or my company. Like, get the fuck over yourself on that. And that was one thing. I think that was one sort of chance by dance that definitely happened, because I feel like our industries are inherently set up to, we've seen it again with this whole Bollywood drug gang thing, right? We are inherently just set up to look like dens of vice and sort of enabling of horrific behavior that other people get to tut at. I'm sorry, but like the shit I've heard about people in finance and investment bankers will fucking make people's toes curl. Like, literally. So that was one thing that really pissed me off. Well, like, you know what? I accept the mistakes that we made, but fucking get the fuck over yourself.
Also, dude.
But Rohan, on that note, I was asked to do stand-up on the Me Too movement for a big telecom giant, right? But I was told, keep it light. Don't talk about any
As you
specific
do.
instances. Don't talk about how this could happen in the office. Don't make any references to anything. And I was like, and this is all coming from a woman.
Yeah.
And the gentleman had to pull me aside and said, look, I'm so, and she said, write it down and I will go through it with a fine tooth comb. Because of course she is Miss Stand-Up Comedy herself.
I also think that, there were a lot of allegations across the board, but I think the reason why stand-up comedy got such a big reaction also is something that Varun Grover put on, I think he tweeted this, and he was like, this is a younger industry and we knew better, and so therefore we should have done better. And I think it doesn't necessarily have to be an organization, but just like, okay, if somebody fucks up, how do you sort of recover from that? Who decides?
Like the Cinta of stand-up comedians, right? Everyone needs a card.
I like realistic takeaways, right? Tangible pieces of advice. A union may or may not work. We may all form a brotherhood or we may not form a brotherhood. So when Anu says, forget all female comedy nights, I would like to see 6 women, 4 guys, or 6 guys, 4 women at the very least. That's something. Now, every one of us would have an adage when it comes to this to give to younger comedians, no? And we could benefit from doing that. Like I would tell a younger comedian, not related to this, just to say, hey, 2 million views doesn't mean you'll sell tickets tomorrow. They might just be used to seeing you for free. So you need to work your ass off so that they pay. Or I've said this to every comic I've ever worked with. The live experience has to be better than your YouTube video or your online video. Otherwise, they'll never pay to see you. Again, they'll only ever watch you for free. That's something I say. Where are these things for this? For how to deal with the opposite sex in comedy? For how to run a green room? These have to come from us, no? We have to pass it down to future comics.
100%.
So maybe it's just putting together like these 15, 20, 30 golden, don't fuck with these rules, takeaways, you know? If you had a 10-minute slot and you did 15, there's no union that's going to come and fuck you over. But comics know that these are accepted things. So maybe it's just these 15, 20 accepted things for gender roles and gender equality in comedy that we put together. That's a start, at least. I don't know. That makes sense?
That's actually a very good point.
That's more powerful because culture is quiet.
You have to make it culturally unacceptable as any of these other things are, I guess, right? If not more so.
Okay, so everybody here in this room today has dealt with a lot of backlash in terms of threats of violence and FIRs and legal challenges in general. It's very evident that comedians are pulling back a lot, especially from political comedy. In this growing atmosphere of fear, is there a plan of action? Do you guys have a plan of how to tackle this going forward? Because it's not going anywhere soon.
Yeah, I've met an immigration consultant. He's very good. So here's where I am personally, right? This is maybe what's happening politically every day, but underlying behind that, what is the social problem that is causing these triggers, right? Like what's happening or what's wrong with us as a society that's causing all of that. And if my comedy can start addressing that, for example, then maybe at least what I am, and again, I accept that in this entire situation, I'm a very privileged person and I've acknowledged that like from day one. So what I guess is to do that, because also beyond a point, it's exhausting. This might sound cynical, but I've also beyond a point realized this is not my job alone. You know, like sometimes you also, if this is as horrible as this may sound, it's like if this is what the country wants to be, then please कुएं में गिर के मरो. किसने lifeguard मुझे किसने बनाया, right? On some level, and on the other level, I'm like, socially, all I can do is make things better or try and have better conversations to the people that I reach out to. And that's where I am, rather than trying to respond to daily political triggers.
I think my strategy is like twofold. One is as a comic, right? I see it as corporate telling you don't talk about these 3 things. I'm like, I'll find a way to talk about it without disturbing the establishment. So that's my way of how do I artistically squeeze myself through so that I never feel like somebody's told me not to say something. I'll find a way artistically to sneak one in. All right. Second is when Kamala gets arrested, I will go stand by him. My comedy is not his comedy. But when he gets arrested for whatever reason, I should know that could be me day after tomorrow. I'll stand by.
Like 100%. We're not even saying if anymore. When? See
when
he gets arrested.
100%. When? 100%.
I'm my aim is to create comedy that outlasts that leader, and that outlasts this India.
Yeah.
That outlives both of these guys. Let's be clear. I mean, we're mincing words, but I'm also starting to think of, man, can I create something that's watchable 5 years from now? Also,
it's just, I feel like for things to get better, more and diverse people's voices need to participate. And there's a certain kind of sort of hegemony that needs to go away.
Yeah.
So people keep saying you don't crack political jokes because you're scared. I was like, no, I have never cracked political jokes because I don't see the funny in it. So I always admire people who do, because I just feel like angst-ridden and angry, right? And I can't convert that into any sort of humor, dark or otherwise. So so right now, if people feel like, oh, they've taken a back seat, yes, with good reason. Also because comedians, it's you feel like low-hanging fruit, no? And like in the low down in the food chain, you can just throw anything at them and see what sticks, because like, what are they going to do? Like, they're in the public eye, but they're not like Bollywood big. You know, they're not. So it's almost like you become like a guinea pig for. And people are doing these experiments on you, whether you're being attacked on Twitter, whether there are FIRs against you for things that you didn't even imagine, you know, that there could be an FIR for, there could be a case about. So if you have to talk about, the last 10 years, it's almost like everyone has lived multiple lifetimes in those 10 years. So although you're only about to enter your teenage in terms of comic life in India, you've already gone through this Ferris wheel of just a lot of puke as well on the way. While
are you pulling back in your comedy?
I'm not. मैं करता ही नहीं था वैसे. मेरा by chance मैंने ऐसे कुछ बोला ही नहीं. But I also feel like this. अगर बहुत लोग बोल रहे हैं कि भगवान पे जोक्स मत मारो, तो वो मैं समझ जाता हूँ. Because see, पहले लोग रेसिस्ट और सेक्सिस्ट जोक्स भी मारते थे. पहले बहुत ओके था काला मोटा ये सब बोलना, कि बीवी पे तुमने मेरी बीवी तंग कर रही है. हमने मना कर दिया कि ये नहीं चलेगा और उन्होंने बंद कर दिया. तो मैं कहा चलो भगवान वाला एक तुम्हारा मान लेते हैं, ठीक है यार. ऑल्सो सेकंड थिंग, अरे यार तुम हंसना बंद कर दो ना उन जोक्स पे. तुम हंसना बंद कर दो. मुझे कोई शौक नहीं है ना भगवान के बारे में ना पॉलिटिक्स के बारे में किसी ने बोलने में. इफ यू स्टॉप लाफिंग, वील स्टॉप डूइंग द जोक्स. वी डोंट केयर अबाउट द इशू एज मच एज वी केयर अबाउट द लाफ्स. सो आई मीन there's also like if there's like every video
getting at the cynical, filthy heart of comedy. Right there, cutting through it all.
Yeah.
All the videos,
The diseased, rotting, maggot-filled corpse of comedy. Abhishek Upmanyu gets at the heart of the issue.
No, because all the videos that they've had problem with, it's killing. I mean, the video is working like it'll work. Yeah, I mean, अबे तुम वो लोग हंस रहे हैं उनको पकड़ो ना. मैं तो ऑडियंस के नाम लिखने शुरू कर दिए. मैं क्या एंड में डाल दूंगा तुम सबका नाम और एड्रेस. लोग भी हंस रहे थे.
Some of you have started going back to live shows. So you have Veer and Upmanyu doing that especially. And the rest of you are finding ways on the digital stage. You're working on specials. Some of you are just taking time out to sort of recharge in a post-pandemic world. Are you feeling hopeful? Where are we at in terms of the experiments that you've done over the year? And what formats do you think are going to stick?
I didn't do any Zoom show because I just couldn't. I was like, चाहे मैं गरीब मर जाऊंगा, मैं ये नहीं करने वाला.
Did you
Zoom
try?
shows. Yeah, no, I just
not even one.
I could do like panel shows where I can at least feed off the energy of other people and like this thing. But no, man, like just I could not get myself to do a Zoom show. Maybe that makes me a Luddite or whatever, but no.
Same.
Yeah, I shot a special. Sorry.
Yeah, but we established that you're exhausting and annoying. We established that you're an exhausting and annoying
stop it,
and tireless
please.
person.
just own it now.
Yeah, really, stop it.
Sorry, Upmanyu, carry
I
on.
was lonely
So,
with the camera.
I don't think about the business that much because as long as I just see everything as a different medium to express yourself, right? So if in the end, suppose live, जो मुझे लगता नहीं होगा कि live हो ही नहीं रहा या Instagram पे हो रहा है या कुछ भी हो रहा है, I just find a way to say whatever I'm saying. I just think of it like that and not think of the business and if I'll grow and I'll get money. I just think of will I get to be funny, and if there's an audience listening to me, whether they are online, offline, on a phone, under my building, wherever they are. It'll work. Is what that's my only hope, and I'm very hopeful.
You don't care about social media. You're not doing digital stage. You are just like, I just want to be funny. I don't care about business or revenue. So like, how are you surviving?
Swag.
Yeah, what the hell is this extra tools? Like,
Swag.
hello. And he just said, नहीं, मेरे को ये सब
लाइव शो में तो लोग आ ही रहे हैं ना, जब तक
Right.
वो हो रहा है मुझे किसी चीज की जरूरत नहीं, तो वही खत्म हो जाती है। उसके बाद अब मैं गरीब हो नहीं सकता, मेरे पापा के पैसे हैं तो मैं गरीब भी नहीं हो सकता, तो बस हो गया ना फिर। अब मैं इसके आगे अब मैं क्या करूं? तो ये है। But other than that, I also feel like if I start focusing on the business and what will happen, for me, just personally, I feel like it just takes me away and it just adds more anxiety to everything. So I just try to be like, तुम बस जोक लिखो और जो चल गया तो ठीक है, नहीं चला तो और लिख लेंगे. Like that's what I try to stay inside the zone. Whatever shows I did, they worked perfectly fine. I mean, उसमें जितने भी लोग आए, मेरे घर में एक कारपेंटर है जिसको चुप कराना पड़ेगा मुझे. 1 मिनट भैया, 2 मिनट रुक जाओ, ठीक है? Yeah, so whatever trial shows I did till now, they worked they worked just as they were working pre-pandemic.
Upmanyu is panicking about leaving. Okay, thanks so much, Abhishek, for joining us today.
Hi guys, sorry to leave you, but I have other plans.
See you, man.
Bye.
We have to go back to those questions.
Look, it was fun for me because I was just chatting with people, and because of Zoom, it brings your audience much closer to you. And for me, funny was that the next audience interaction show I did, I had like 10-15 people from the previous show up again. So I'm like, but I've already chatted with you. I know all that there is to know about you. They're like, yeah, but we're enjoying it so much more. And now the same set of people show up at all my online shows. You know, they've literally become friends and family now. But the best part of Zoom shows are corporate shows on Zoom, because I get to walk in, I get to do my stuff, I get to pretend that went well because no one and then I get to switch off and go back to my life. So hey, it's not all downside.
I think also the funny thing is that people have had to figure out life on Zoom, right? So you have comedians playing chess, you've been like a multiple quizzes and panel discussions, and at some point, like I stopped and I said, what am I doing? Like I'm doing everything else but bloody stand-up, dude. Like I know a lot of trivia now thanks to this quiz, but come on. And initially there's that full like angst and rage, rage against the dying of the light. I will not go gentle into that good night, because they're like, this can't be my life. I went to drama school and now I'm looking at a box, like in a box, looking at other people in boxes, seeing far too much of them. You don't expect to see so much. I don't want to see the interiors of your house. There was a distance that was nice from stage. We were together and we were not. And now you're in my face, like lying down like an apsara. Like, I don't want to see this. So there's a lot to contend with. And so I never did a solo show because also I was in the process of writing my second hour. And now the person you were pre-COVID is not the person you are post. And right now you have no sense of what you are.
I have not done a single Zoom show because I'd rather die than do that. Because it's like,
wow.
I don't want to get used
0 to death in 1 second.
Yeah,
give me stage time or give me death.
Yeah. Because I think I'm in denial right now, saying, "नहीं, ये हो ही नहीं सकता. मुझे ये adjust नहीं करना." Like I worked hard enough in my career to ensure that I don't have to do too many corporate shows, because it really makes me unhappy as a human being. Really makes me unhappy. So I've removed that from my life. Right, so Zoom shows kya baat hai? I'm a big shit. I can do without it. And this could just be me being a boomer saying, "नहीं, ये तो हो ही नहीं सकता. ये गलत बात है. ऐसे नहीं करना है." But I'm in denial about it.
But it is what, yeah.
Yeah, I'm in denial.
Rohan, after threatening for very long to start, I'm going to stream now, any minute now. Okay, next week. You finally started doing it. And then you went on Discord. Are you planning to just stick around there for a bit?
No, I think two things. This is not my plan. I think this is what's going to happen. I think that the second things go back to a stage where people can go sit in an audience, and which is already like we're seeing happening, and people can perform live. I feel like stand-up is dominantly going to shift back to being very much an in-person thing. The great thing about like the silver lining to this sort of shitty, dark sort of year that everybody's been through is that I think one great thing about this streaming format and the Zoom, etc., whatever it is, I think we're going to get what the sort of British got with their panel shows. Where all the comedians, while they are definitely live comedians, etc., doing stand-up, they have all these formats where in our case, instead of them being on TV, etc., whatever, they would be on YouTube. So today, whether it's chess or whether it's quizzes or whether it's just these Graham Norton style formats of 2 and 3 people sitting together and talking it out, I think those are things that will always find a home online, because that is stuff that I find that a lot of people will happily come and watch at like 10 o'clock at night when they're home and they have nothing better to do and they're looking for that content. So I think that is here to stay, and that is a format or multiple formats that if comics and entertainers want to keep experimenting with. I think the second that it is by and large safe for people to sort of experience this in person again, I definitively believe that that is something that will happen. And on the day that that happens, I will invite all of you. I will print out the single largest Zoom logo that I can find, and we will Wicker Man set fire to that shit and dance around it. And it will be glorious.
I've built a 10-year career and I'm now actively just trying to end it. Is basically the mission in my life right now, because it literally feels like back to square one, and it's that level of exciting. Like, look at the gigs I'm doing right now. It feels like 2008. There are just 80 people like there were in 2008. There are no cell phones because I locked that shit up. I'm losing money on every single show that I do. They are fucking happy to be there because they don't know how it's going to be, because this is new. I'm just fucking happy to be there because this is all new. So I have zero fear for the first time in a very, very long time. I'm saying things to an audience that I've not had the courage to say in 10 years. And they are responding to it in a way that they've not had the courage to respond to in 10 years. It just, like, this erased everything. And I just feel fucking free after a very, very, very long time. And it's one thing for me to feel that, but it's quite another thing to have like the audience feel that as well. But the audience is like, fuck, we're risking COVID to be here. Ab bol. Jo bhi bolna hai bol. You know, like if I'm going to catch COVID at the end of this gig, fucking go for it. Let's go tonight.
Genuinely, I feel like I went through a period where I don't even know what's funny anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have no perspective. Really, it is like that. Like someone just said, oh, the locusts are, they call Sonu Sood and you can send the people on the locust airline. And I pissed myself laughing. And I was like, what is going on? What is going on?
I'm trying to picture Anu's mental state on the day where this was the thing that broke her.
It was too much. And also I find like a lot of times, like, you know, something has got so many million views and I watch it and I'm thinking, I don't get it. So like, is there something wrong with me? Do you know what I mean? And that's when you realize there is an audience for everything. There is an audience to watch anything and everything. So like, and ultimately, I think you need to have self-awareness. You need to know who your audience is, right? So because also a lot of times you have a certain image as a comedian, and also before you've even opened your mouth when you get on stage, people have made an assumption about you as a comedian, right? True. So if it is, and you don't realize that because these are all imperceptible things. So I always feel the pressure to break something up top with a joke, because I just need to hear that laugh instantaneously, because I also feel like they look at me and think that I'm some Mrs. Maisel wannabe. So I feel that need to go, yeah, you know, oh, Anu, South Bombay, posh, speaks English with this accent, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I think that the beauty is that right now, no one has any preconceived notions about anything, because we've seen all sorts of things that worked during this lockdown. So we have no idea whether they're going to continue to work, whether that was just a lockdown thing, or this is life as it is, you know.
Anu, are you feeling hopeful or not?
I'm very zen now. I'm like, whatever.
Okay.
In urban life, it's difficult to take a year off and do nothing, right? Yeah. And in our lives, all of us are running at a pace and we're like, we feel FOMO if we stop. This year forced me to change as a human being. And I'm a different person now. And you know, until last year, I was about, how do I find my authentic self that I can find saleable? Today, I'm like, I found my authentic self. I'm like, sale to main kar dunga, but whoever's coming is coming to buy me.
Yeah.
No, I found my voice. If I don't have an audience, I'm fine with it. I'm okay. Yeah. But this is my voice. Because life is short now. Life is shortened by 1 year. And I think 1 year is huge. And from now, let's sing our own songs. And I think the internet and the
Discord server.
Discord server will help us find our community.
That shit.
Yeah, we'll find our fucking communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
On Instagram Live, guys. That's where we're going to find them.
Damn right.
To add to what stand-up will be, if it gets back to that, I think it'll be the best it's ever been. It'll be the most innovative it's ever been, with the best audiences you've ever caught. Like it's going to be fucking amazing. That's what I feel.
Okay, so on that note, thank you so much for a very, very, very fun chat, and congratulations on a very exciting 10 years to have watched from where I'm standing.
And also on that note, Ravina, thank you for creating something that stands like a sort of official record of the times.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's very, very cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because you are the Sinta card now for comedy.
No,
Yeah.
cancel. I refuse.
Acha, while there's this talk of optimism, there's a new virus, huh, guys?